What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and our Movement Play of the Week. This week, for week 5 of the National Football League season here in 2023. And for the first time in this year, we have a defensive player gracing our Movement Play of the Week. And it's for very good reason. Because on Sunday Night Football, under the brightest of lights, under the highest of pressure and anxiety in an early season matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco linebacker Fred Warner, who has been in our all movement team in the past, showed out and shined in the bright lights. And we're about to see a few of his plays from Sunday night as San Francisco put a absolute ass kicking on the Dallas Cowboys. So we fast forward here to the first play that we're going to get into with Warner. And really, when we look at who Fred Warner is and how Fred Warner behaves, these two plays that we're about to get into, this first one just has a number of different layers, him acting on what we would refer to as both simultaneous and successive affordances. And we're going to get into a little bit about how that might be illustrated on this play. And then the second play later on in the fourth quarter, when we're going to see him pick off Dak Prescott and then go into this playmaker mode, we're going to see the best of who Fred Warner is. And we're really going to be able to see his movement skill, his abundance, his adaptability, and his overall form of life being illustrated and displayed on both of these respective plays. So let's get into this first one. Like I said, second quarter, 7-0 49ers. And in San Francisco, again, well, we know where Fred Warner is. We know how he plays. Middle linebacker right here. And I have often talked about how guys like Warner, Roquan Smith, now of the Ravens, and then also Devin White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. These three guys at the middle linebacker position really personified this idea of really attuned, really adaptable problem solving at the position. And what we see from these really attuned and really adaptable problem solvers is a true skilled intentionality. We're going to see it right here. Let me play it through a number of times through. We can see him almost get taken out by the rub route there, coming across the middle. And we're going to get into this a few times because the play is pretty short, right? And I want you to watch 54 Warner do what he does and really just couple these perceptions, intentions, and actions. And of course, unless this is your first time here at Football Beyond the Stats on our Movement Play of the Week, you've heard me say that time and time again, but we see it from Warner here better than almost anyone that we could imagine. Let's watch it in slow motion now as we kind of get into who he is and how he solves this problem. Remember, we always talk about whether it's a running back solving these layered movement problems, or it could be a wide receiver moment by moment in the simultaneous and successive affordance that they could act upon. Remember, simultaneous meaning that there would be a certain openness and responsiveness to a rich landscape of affordances, any number of ways to act at any given moment in time. The successive affordances, how we solve one movement problem and what opportunity we both perceive as well as act upon is going to set up the next affordance or opportunity to act. We see it really nicely and neatly here from Warner. And in case you were living under a rock, again, he's right here, middle linebacker, Mike linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers, number 54. I want you to kind of think, if you would, as a viewer, as a movement skill aficionado, put yourself into Fred Warner's human movement system, what he might be looking at, how he might be intending to act, the decisions that he makes moment to moment, and how his movement skill is being coordinated, controlled, and organized in a highly adaptive fashion, like local movement problem to local movement problem, because there's a number of them here that are going to be stacked together. First, as we see him right here with the rub route from CeeDee Lamb coming across the middle, on this underneath crosser. And then with another guy, I think this is 87, coming across the middle also, sort of playing this pick game, if you will, with Fred Warner, who is, as we can see right now, trying to look through, so not only to, but also through the traffic. And as he looks to, he is going to be able to pick up the various information sources that are going to be important and imperative to how he solves this problem. 88 and 87 crossing in front of him, the numerous bodies obviously here in the middle of the field, and then ultimately how Dak Prescott behind it all as Warner looks to and through is all feeding into. This is all information that he must detect moment to moment as he determines where it is that he's going to go, how it is that he's going to go there, and what it is that he's intending to do. And we want to think about how tightly coupled these perceptions, intentions, and actions will be for Warner as he connects to this peculiar unfolding problem in front of him. Really cool stuff here to illustrate the nuanced nature of how Warner is behaving. We see him actually enter this space and go essentially take both of these guys off of their timing. Like you see 88 as Warner comes through, and they actually connect with one another, right? We got to think about what that would do with 88 CD Lamb. And obviously he had just come past and through the tight end also in that crosser. Let's go back another frame back so you can kind of see it again from this perspective and think about how Warner's going to enter this space at a finely timed fashion so he doesn't get himself knocked off balance, but he actually can get himself moving ahead. Now we look at again, moment by moment, how and what Warner might be perceiving. Again, he's now looking to and through yet again as this unfolds, seeing Prescott moving with his arm back in the cocking arm fashion here, and knowing that he's likely going to attempt to throw the ball as soon as he possibly can. But look at Warner right here in the way as this happens, right? He had to get through that pick, get in the passing lane on this underneath route with 88 CD Lamb here, and then continue to perceive upon what Prescott is doing and how Prescott might be acting. As he gets into this lane and he sees Prescott pull the arm down, we see Warner settle his feet momentarily. And as he settles his feet, he knows that he has to be in the passing lane of that which what lies behind him. So even though he can't see where CD Lamb is, he has a certain attunement and understanding, or resonance, if you will, as to what's happening behind, because he sees Prescott pull the arm down. And then we find that Warner, in a tightly coupled fashion, with that information he's picking up about Prescott's arm, he settles his feet accordingly. He just sits down, knowing that he has to be in the passing lane between number 4 Dak Prescott and number 88 CD Lamb. He settles his feet, and watch how connected he is to this movement action of Prescott. You see him settle his feet. You see Prescott's movement kinematics, his biomechanics, his posture change, and Warner immediately recognizes this. He's able to pick up the information about Dak's movement behaviors and watch this back foot going into the ground. And when I say that back foot, I mean Fred Warner. That back foot slices into the ground, and he immediately accelerates forward, all while knowing that there is a pretty good likelihood that this now going into a scramble drill, he knows now that, let me see if I can draw it this way, that CD Lamb has the opportunity to go left or right, that he likely settled in. And he has to trust, he being Warner, has to trust that what is happening behind him is going to be taken care of by his teammates. But at the same time, as he accelerates to Prescott, watch him put his arms up to try and prepare for the movement, again, throwing and cocking action that we see right here from Dak Prescott. I mean, just really finely tuned, attuned, sensitive to the informational variables about how Prescott is behaving. We see it all closely connected to how Fred Warner is behaving in relation to it. Both arms go up now when that hand comes back, and then Prescott has to hold the ball, take it down, and Werner goes right into the sack attempt. Let's watch that all in its succession now, again, back through. So as we put this together, remember simultaneous successive affordances, open and responsive to a rich landscape of opportunities to act. Look how tightly coupled Fred Werner's behaviors are to the behaviors of what's unfolding around him. It's not just what's happening in front of him, it is what is happening moment to moment around him and in front of him. Such supreme attunement, intentionality, and ultimately adaptability from Fred Werner here. This is as good as it gets. I personally could watch this on loop because you can see how tightly coupled Fred Werner's movement behaviors are to that unfolding and peculiar problem. Let's fast forward now, and we will get back into our 100% speed as we get into this one and get into the second play that I want to feature here today. Let's see if I can find it. We're now fast forwarding fourth quarter. Obviously, the game is firmly in hand with the San Francisco 49ers. We're in the tail end of this game with just less than 15 minutes left to play in the game. The score is 35-10. But Fred Warner, up to this point, is, of course, feeling himself. Not only with that sack, he had a forced fumble earlier in the game, and he was literally just everywhere. On a night that was supposed to be about two defensive juggernauts who should be fighting for the Defensive Player of the Year in Werner's own teammate, Nick Bosa, defensive end for the San Francisco 49ers, right here, number 97, right? I'm kind of circling them with my mouse. And then number 11, Micah Parsons for the Dallas Cowboys, offensive linebacker. It was kind of, I guess, put out there as this matchup between these two, these Defensive Player of the Year candidates here in the early part of the 2023 season. But Fred Warner sort of stole the show on this respective night. And we're going to see exactly how he does that here. Of course, 2nd and 10, he has now been moved around the formation ever so slightly. The San Francisco 49ers can use him as this moving chess piece in a very unique way, just simply because of his adaptability and his unique skill set. Fred Warner, as good as it comes, dropping into coverage, covering across a wide plethora, both zone and man type of scenarios and situations, as good as it gets in the NFL at his position. And we just watch this yet again, how tightly coupled these behaviors are. And now he gets an opportunity to go into offensive playmaker mode, takes that ball hawk mentality, and then goes in to the playmaker mode. So let's watch it a few times, of course, in 100% speed, real time, as we again see him just kind of lurking, being a predator in the middle of the field. When that comes to being that predator, sometimes that ball hawk type of mentality too, that ball first, ball is the program type of idea. Before we saw him evade some traffic, disrupt, get in a passing lane, leap, take some things away, and then ultimately get the sack. Now we see him in coverage, essentially doing the same thing, but just in a little different way. Okay, one more at 100% speed, and then we'll watch frame by frame as he solves movement problem by movement problem, both on the defensive and then when he gets to go on the offensive, right? So cool stuff here yet again from Fred Warner as we see him drop into coverage. Remember, dexterity is about being able to solve any emerging movement problem in any situation and in any condition, right? And when it comes to playing middle linebacker in the NFL, you have to be able to solve problems across situations. We saw it before, him dropping into coverage, him attacking straight vertical in front of him. And now, ball in the air after being tipped, being able to go from being in coverage and keeping things in front of him to picking up what is in his periphery over to his right and then attacking on the ball that's in the air. Watch the movement skill here from Fred Warner once this ball is thrown. I wanted to pause it just a little bit before that. Obviously, I was a little late on the gun, on the pause button, but really watch how his footwork, remember, it's always about footwork in context, right? That's why a guy could do this till they're blue in the face, going down the field, backpedaling, slicing through this W drill or something of that sort, right? This type of backpedal to zone or speed turn type of actions, either one. And if it's not in relation to what's actually happening in front of oneself or in close connection to an unfolding problem, it is not going to be coupled to the information that's going to be present there. But again, watch Werner. Remember, the ball is informative, right? Right now, he's taking in information about both parties. We see where his head is turned, right? Or we see where his head is facing. He's looking at the first receiver coming in, or out into the route. And then he immediately has to turn in his periphery to his right to see where CeeDee Lamb is going in a tightly coupled fashion, has to be really decisive and really tuned in about what he's picking up. So he has to be super sensitive to how both guys are behaving, because it is likely determining his depth as well as when the ball could be coming and what might be there for opportunities to act. And as we see him move from this target to this one, CeeDee Lamb, again, I'm kind of showing you this. Let me highlight both of them. He moves from this target here to this one over here with Lamb, and we can see that from Werner himself beginning to turn his head. Look at how his body is coiling and slicing and loading into this angle. Again, perceive to act, act to perceive. The two are tightly coupled and intertwined with one another. When it comes to finding a functional fit, becoming one with a unique problem, Fred Warner, as good as it gets, is tightly coupled at the middle linebacker position. Watch his foot once again, slice into the ground. He settles his feet, turns and flips his hips, and turns to look to see where and how he might be able to behave. He sees CeeDee Lamb. Let me get back to a highlighter here. He sees CeeDee Lamb's movement behaviors change slightly, and he's stopping and coming, him himself coming to a stop. Werner then has to move on and realize, again, looking to and through, how Dak Prescott might be behaving. Because he sees CeeDee Lamb stopping on a route, he knows that something else is unfolding in front of or around him. And when he looks to Prescott, he sees, again, the ball being very informative. We see it here. It is in the air. He's going to look to and for it. Again, this doesn't seem like rocket science, but I want you guys to think about how quickly and rapidly these things are unfolding, how quickly Werner himself has to detect the information about what's unfolding here. And then he makes a break to Gallup, Michael Gallup, coming across the middle. Let me get one frame back, or a little frame back, because this is a long video, all the highlights of the Cowboys 49ers game. Watch again as Werner breaks on this now once he sees the ball, knowing that a different guy is coming across the middle after having seen Lamb stop his feet. He's going to attack in his periphery to the right, and he immediately attacks with intentions. Obviously, the ball gets knocked up in the air, and Werner goes into tip drill ball hawk mode, and now we see him go on the offensive. Here at Football Beyond the Stats, we've often talked about how unique and special it is when defensive players go on the offensive and are immediately able to act in a highly adaptable way once the ball ends up in their hands. Offensive players have zero desire to want to tackle a defensive player with a ball in their hands. They don't have the behaviors or the skills most often, versus in contrast, the defensive players themselves often do, because when they came up the ranks, when they developed or acquired their skill, it's likely that these types of guys played offense at one time, middle school, high school, and the like, maybe even later in some of these cases. And that's why we see these defensive players who are able to act in a way that is more offensive. We even see it here from a Fred Warner, highly skilled with a ball in his hands for a defensive player. We're watching it play out right in front of our very eyes. So let's not miss the forest through the trees here, guys and gals. Let's look at how special this type of stuff actually is. So even though Werner doesn't score, I want you to look at how he's actually behaving. Look how sensitive and attuned he becomes now with a ball in his hands. And he's actually looking for the problems to solve, problem by problem here, and acting in a very intentional, very adaptable, but very patient manner. Look at him here with the ball in his hands, attuned, sensitive to where guys might be moving and how guys might be presenting information sources that are going to be perturbations, that are going to be barriers or obstacles to him being able to behave in a given fashion. He's taking in information about teammates and opponents. An opponent here who's a wannabe tackler, an opponent here in Gallup who's a wannabe tackler, and then these three San Francisco 49ers that are going to present an opportunity for him. As long as he remains patient and as long as he owns his movement behaviors, they are going to be helpers essentially to him going where he wants to go and how he wants to go there. So after taking in this information, and very, very rapidly, mind you, he starts to change his behaviors. Look at it right there. He goes into this ownership, this slow gallop. He goes from more of a curve linear run to this gallop and load. So he opens himself up to a landscape of opportunities or affordances, depending on what might unfold. He gives himself a two-way go, even a 2+ way go, as we see it here. Okay. Pretty cool stuff from Fred Warner. Again, even though he doesn't score, we see him acting in a highly adaptable fashion. Now, of course, it just gets to be too many bodies coming in too short a period of time, too quick a period of time. But still pretty impressive, super impressive stuff here, at least from my perspective, from 54, Fred Warner, tightly coupling those perceptions, cognitions, and actions to become one with this movement problem, both on the defensive side of the ball as well as offensive. Really cool stuff, and hopefully it all is starting to pop out for y'all, making some sense for y'all as to what we talk about when we think about a player's form of life, how they are behaving, and remembering that every movement problem presents both challenges as well as opportunities. Those opportunities become affordances, simultaneous and successive ones in most plays for most players on an NFL football field. And those who are able to solve those types of movement problems in this tightly coupled ways are the ones that we see on an NFL Sunday standing out in comparison to their peers. Now, I didn't really get too deep in today to the movement form of life of who Fred Warner is. I would highly implore you to check out the video I've attached to the blog post for this week's Football Behind the Stats Movement Play of the Week, where NFL Films dives into who Fred Warner is at a little deeper level, has him mic'd up, listen to him talk, listen to him as he plays the game, and watch his movement problem solving in action and in full life. So for Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, Football Beyond the Stats, and our Movement Play of the Week this week for Week 5 of the 2023 National Football League season. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, comment on the section below, and I will look to speak to you all next week in Week 6 of the 2023 season.